It's over 9,000!
Welcome, Super Elite Warriors, to Final Forum, a podcast for the discussion of all things Dragon Ball. I am your host, Jelly, an elite recruiting member of the Frieza Force on a mission to find the best warriors from across the galaxy to join the greatest army of all time. And I am joined, as always, by my new recruit co-host.
This is the Bekinney.
And we are just doing whatever it was we were doing the last time we spoke, when we were doing our Sandland episode. It is Halloween-ish season. It is spooky time, but you can only do spooky Dragon Ball things so often.
That's right.
And we did it last year.
A little bit of a limited pool.
That's it. No more spookiness. No, so we decided, if this is your first episode listening to us, we decided when we started that in order to get our show and ourselves into the spirit of Halloween, since you can only do spooky things with Dragon Ball so often, that we'd take the other avenue of Halloween, that of costumes. And the idea is, let's look at a costume of that a Dragon Ball creative wore, and when they worked on a different franchise.
Makes sense.
It works. Most of the time. It's worked pretty well so far.
It's not a stretch at all. What are you talking about?
It's also just a way for us to broaden our horizons a little bit, right? And get to talk about some things that we don't otherwise talk about. Like, you know, the first year we did a Godzilla commentary, which we never talk about that usually.
No, not at all.
But no, it's just a chance for us to get to talk about some of the other stuff that we like.
And we got a humdinger here today. This was a really good one. I'm glad you put this on the queue for us to watch.
Yes. So, as you could probably tell from your episode title, today we are going to watch 1986's Castle in the Sky, a Studio Ghibli and Hayao Miyazaki film. We're going to do this as a commentary. If you're familiar with our commentaries, we sync you up. We're going to do that in a second. In fact, I'll tell you right now while I then explain more about our commentaries. We are synced up at the 12-second mark. If you have the G Kids version of the movie, or if you're watching on Max, formerly HBO Max, then you will want to be at the 12-second mark. That is right after the Ghibli logo has faded out, and it immediately pops up with Takuma Shoten Presents. That's where we're queued up. I thought that would be the best place because I know that Disney also previously released this movie, so there may be versions of this that some people have that have the Disney logo at the beginning. And that would potentially be at a slightly different timing than the G-Kids logo. So hopefully you're currently getting yourself synced up to there. If not, if you're choosing not to sync up at all, I wouldn't worry about it too much. We tend to not be super screen specific.
Yeah, that's true. We're more of like a side conversation that's going on that you wish would stop while you're trying to watch a good movie.
We do point out things when we see them that we really like, and I will encourage you to do that as I'm rambling in my rants, and I will do the same for you. We have no qualms about interrupting each other and being like, oh, I really like this part.
That's true.
Just to say. So with that said, hopefully you've got your Xbox controller, your PlayStation controller, your remote, your hand over your keyboard, your
cell phone?
Please no.
I feel like we said that last. Well, no, but like the remote,
oh yes, if you're using your cell phone as your Fire Stick remote. Oh, your Fire Stick remote.
Yeah.
Hopefully you got one of those things.
Not to watch it on, though. The cell phone to watch it would be a travesty, because this is a gorgeous movie. Don't do that.
Yeah. Also, a remote to watch it on would not work very well.
Yeah, probably.
We will count down 3, 2, 1, go. On go, press play, and we'll get off and running. So, without further ado, since this is a long movie, especially for our show, we're usually like under an hour. This is going to be over 2. In 3, 2, 1, go. And you should have your Takuma Shoten Presents and popping up pictures of clouds. So let's start right from the top. This is Castle in the Sky is the name of this movie. And as is usual with our non-Dragon Ball discussions, this is our introductory look on this show, at least, at Miyazaki, Ghibli, in this movie. So we're also going to look into how this ties into Dragon Ball. So there might be some new information for people who haven't considered a connection between two of Japan's animation juggernauts. But if you're like a huge Ghibli fan, you may not, and you're looking for new Ghibli information, I'm sorry.
I feel like we should start every episode of this show with "I'm sorry."
Hey, I think we do a mostly good job. Originally released in Japan on August 2nd, 1986, this is the heyday of Akira Toriyama's career. I like to contextualize things that way when we do these non-Dragon Ball things. Dr. Slump is over at this point, and Dragon Ball is in the thick of its rise to unparalleled popularity. The manga is in the midst of its introduction to Tao Pai Pai, and the anime is debuting the semifinals of the 21st Tenkaichi Budokai. Curse of the Blood Rubies will have its premiere in December of this year, and Dragon Ball is fast becoming a massive phenomenon in Japan. We're still a solid decade or more away from it truly becoming an international sensation, especially in the United States, but Toriyama's series is rising in Japan to heights nobody could have predicted. This is where he's becoming like, he's starting to slowly realize he's not going to be allowed to be done anytime soon.
The curse of success.
Castle in the Sky is an early directorial effort of Hayao Miyazaki, being just his third ever feature film as director, and the first under the banner of Studio Ghibli. It was produced by Isao Takahata, a Studio Ghibli co-founder, who I've very much previously lauded as the director of Pom Poko and Grave of the Fireflies. Nice family-friendly entertainment with Grave of the Fireflies. And Joe Hisashi did the score. Hisashi is the composer behind a lot of Ghibli films. He worked with Miyazaki many times over the course of their careers, even up through Miyazaki's most recent film, which was 2023's The Boy and the Heron. That's the only Miyazaki movie I have yet to see.
Same here.
It's readily available now. I just haven't gotten around to it. I plan to before the year is out.
Makes sense.
Castle in the Sky was considered a box office failure. In Japan, they look at ticket sales more so than box office, but it only sold 750,000 tickets in Japan in 1986. We could do some calculations here using the average ticket price in Japan of about $6.50 at the time, and come up with the movie making a little over $5 million against a budget of $8 million.
Oof.
Wah, wah. Wow. And so with ticket sales lower than Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, just 2 years prior, it's fair to say that Studio Ghibli they got off to a bit of an inauspicious start. As Ghibli's popularity has increased over time and people have rediscovered this movie and a lot of their earlier releases, re-releases have brought its box office cume up to almost $160 million. And in the UK, it is the 8th best-selling foreign language film on home video, placing behind 5 other Ghibli films. And I couldn't find the full list, but that speaks to how good this movie actually is.
It's the definition of cult classic.
Right? And now we're in like our opening credits. First of all, I love the animation in this whole movie.
I was going to say, with the machinery stuff, I love the level of detail that they get into with how they design stuff in this movie.
Oh yeah, and I love the animation in the whole movie, but I really like how they at times, and specifically during these credits here, use like a different style.
It's almost like a lithograph or something like that.
This style reminds me of The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh.
Okay, yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
This reminds me a lot of that, and this is really cool. This is sort of giving us our background on Laputa, or the Laputian people, and how they became like super technologically advanced and took to the sky. And they take to the sky in these giant floating cities, basically. And this is like filling in visually. It's doing a whole lot in a very little amount of time.
Yes, and this is something that we'll see also multiple times throughout the whole movie, where they literally are just showing, not telling,
Yes.
which is something that is kind of rare in animation, because it's so much cheaper to just animate characters talking to each other than it is to show all of these crazy vistas.
Right, and it's becoming increasingly rare in movies in general.
Also
as
true.
As a Godzilla fan, if you saw this year's Godzilla Kong, The New Empire, there's like feels like 45-minute scene where Rebecca Hall just explains the movie that you've been watching up to this point.
Gotta love it.
With this movie, getting back to Castle in the Sky, there have been 2 different English language dubs produced for the film, with the first being commissioned in 1988 by Takuma Streamline for the express purpose of being played on international flights to and from Japan. This dub also aired on TV a few times in a heavily edited for time format, and so it wasn't until Disney purchased the Ghibli catalog under their Buena Vista branch and provided their own dub in 1998 that an unedited version of the movie was first available with an English dub, at least for wider viewing. I guess if you were on a plane in 1988, you saw an unedited version, but how many people fit that description?
I was about to say, that's probably a pretty small audience.
This dub, the Disney dub of the movie, was intended for theatrical showings, actually, but when Princess Mononoke underperformed in theaters, Disney decided to just release this one on home video, which they ultimately waited until 2003 to do.
That's
surprising. The film hits on a bunch of environmentalist themes, so be on the lookout for those as we watch. Specifically, and you would have picked up on this in the opening credits, so after you're done, go back and rewatch those. It was partly inspired by a trip that Miyazaki took to Wales, where he witnessed the 1984-85 coal miners' strike in the UK, which is a pivotal moment in the history of trade unions in the UK. Unfortunately for the union employees at the time, there was never a ballot officially held to authorize the strike, which resulted in it being ruled illegal and giving the government ample cause to push very hard against the picketing, and ultimately the strike was crushed with a sweeping victory for the government, leading to mine closures, loss of jobs, and significant weakening of the trade union strength in the UK as a whole, not just for coal miners, but this set like a lot of precedent for the government to squash a lot of strikes in the future. Hopefully that was all relatively apolitical for you, so no one's turning us off for being woke or pro.
Wait, you literally just relayed the facts of the situation. How could anybody possibly get upset about that?
But I think it's an interesting historical event, and Miyazaki was inspired when he witnessed pieces of it, not only by the way the workers demonstrated and fought for their rights, but by the way they banded together within their communities to keep their families together and fed while the government pushed them in order to end the strike. He also took a lot of visual inspiration from the look of the movie in general, from Welsh mining towns, and then also the castles and countryside that we're going to see throughout the movie were inspired by his trips to Wales. So if you're watching this and you're thinking, boy, this really doesn't look like it's set in Japan, that's intentional.
Yeah. And I will probably at multiple points throughout this movie be like, that's a beautiful shot, because there's a lot of them here. So we can and will talk about things like Ghibli in general and Miyazaki and his lasting legacy. But let's get to the reason why we're doing this movie as part of our podcast. So why would a Dragon Ball podcast cover Castle in the Sky? If you remember in our commentary on Curse of the Blood Rubies, we mentioned that both that movie and this one key frame animation from Shindo Productions. So that's basically the entire reason. And it gives us an opportunity to talk about one of Dragon Ball's most important animators. So Shindo Productions was founded by Mitsuo Shindo, an animator and art director born in 1944, who joined Mushi Productions in 1964 and worked on Astro Boy. We've had a bunch of people work on Astro Boy and Dragon Ball over the years, and maybe we'll visit that some other day. But after Mushi Productions declared bankruptcy, Shindo began working directly for Toei, at the time named Sunrise Company. He founded Shindo Productions in 1981 and maintained a good working relationship with Toei, working on Dr. Slump and later Dragon Ball. We'd have liked to have find out more about Shindo, but unfortunately he shares a name with an artist who's done like a ton of album artwork, and he's very prominent, and so he tends to dominate the search results. So that's about the best this is about the best we can do, honestly.
Yeah, it was. I initially started reading because I was looking into this guy, and I didn't know any better. And I'm like reading, and I'm like, it doesn't say literally anything about working on Dr. Slump or Dragon Ball, which you would think
it'd make the resume. So Shindo Productions would provide animation for episodes of Dragon Ball throughout the original Dragon Ball as well as Dragon Ball Z. In 1984, Shindo Productions hired a young animator named Tadayoshi Yamamuro. Yamamuro worked on some animation for this movie and became one of the most important animators to work on Dragon Ball, ultimately becoming the main character designer for the series. Yamamuro was born in 1960 in Odawara City in the Kanagawa Prefecture of central Japan, and after working on a few movies as well as the Dr. Slump anime, he wound up also working on Dragon Ball and ultimately taking over from Mitsuo Shindo as the lead animation supervisor at Shindo Productions in 1991.
I'm going to break in real quick
Go
here.
for it.
I love this part of the movie. This
opening shot. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Why can't I think of this character's name? But
Ponzu?
Ponzu, yeah. He has woken up and he's climbed up on top of his house and he's playing a song on his trumpet that is like telling the town that it's time to wake up. It becomes like it's a diegetic piece to the score where like the score is scoring it, but he is playing the trumpet. Yeah. It's really, really cool. It's really awesome.
I really like that moment that as he's sort of like playing this reveille, it almost looks like he wakes up the sun because the sunlight starts to wash over the town as he begins playing. And it's just chef's kiss. It's a wonderful shot. I've
also heard an interpretation because if you pay attention, it starts with the trumpet and then the other instruments kind of slowly creep in a little bit, that the other instruments you hear are his interpretation of what the other instruments are playing along with him.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah.
So, getting back to Yamamuro, in 1992, he and Katsuyoshi Nakatsuru replaced Minoru Maeda as the lead character designer. Maeda was known more for his rounded style, and as Toriyama's style became more angular, he found he was struggling to create good character models for the anime team, and his style was no longer in sync with Toriyama's. Maeda left the franchise around the Perfect Cell arc. Yamamuro, known for his more straight-line styles, was a better fit, and he has maintained such a good working relationship with Toei and shown such a knack for working on Toriyama's properties that he's now the main character designer for the Dragon Ball franchise. Despite leaving Shindo Productions in 1996, he stayed with Toei and the Dragon Ball franchise. He's drawn the cover art of many of the Dragon Ball home video releases. He's provided some of the new animation for Kai, and he's the lead character designer for Dragon Ball Super and Dragon Ball Heroes. In interviews, Yamamuro has expressed that he feels like his current position is a result of his years of hard work on the franchise, and has noted that he was fortunate to work with Toriyama on character designs over the years, and pointed out some of the different levels to which Toriyama would get involved in character design. Often, with movies and original characters, Yamamuro or Maeda or Nakatsuru would design the character and then take them to Toriyama for approval. But at certain points, Toriyama would get adamant about a design and a character and wholesale provide those character designs for the animation team. And when he did, Yamamuro's philosophy was that if Toriyama cared this much to provide a complete character design, it should be animated as much as possible entirely as was provided. So he could simply work to make sure the design would look consistent from all angles for animation in that case. Perhaps something of a kindred spirit, you would say, with Toriyama. Yamamuro says that if he were granted a wish from the dragon, it would be for a secluded small cottage on a lake. And honestly, me personally, I think I'd take this kid's cabin. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Ponzu lives by himself. He's an orphan. They never get into at all what happened to his parents, do they?
I don't think so. I know that like a lot of the other families and stuff are pretty friendly with him and do look after him though.
Yes.
So my guess would be that since this is a mining town, there was probably some sort of accident or something. But that's just my headcanon. I don't have anything to confirm that.
I mean, that's what makes sense, right? It doesn't explain where his mother went.
It's not super important to the plot.
No.
As it turns out, well, I mean, other than the fact that he's an orphan, he can run off and go on this adventure, I guess. But
right.
The story itself tends to be centered a little bit more around Shida.
Right. And he's just along for the ride, kind of. But it is really it is a movie about these two kids, and it's a lot of, you see a lot of Miyazaki's like tendencies right away in a movie like this.
Mm-hmm.
He very much believes in like the innocence of children. I'm not sure if it was this movie or if it was just his like comments on other things where like they have like young teen romances and things, and he basically was like, "You're ruining it."
Nobody wants this romance stuff. Get it out of here.
Kids should be kids, and two kids from a different gender when they're young kids can just be friends.
Sure.
And that's a bit of a Toriyama-ism too. Like, who cares about this romance stuff? Like, get that out. That's not. Get that out of here.
There's definitely some parallels between the two for sure.
Oh. Talk about grumps who wish they never created what they created.
And then we have Junji Ito, who's the other side of the coin. Just horribly unnerving pictures and just like weird storylines, but he's like the happiest dude I've ever seen in interviews.
Oh yeah. Yep. So we've just talked about two different animation supervisors important to Dragon Ball's history, Mitsuo Shindo and Tadayoshi Yamamuro. But what does an animation supervisor do? Because we've also talked a little bit, I think, in the past about Minoru Maeda. We'll probably talk about Nakatsuru in the future. Ultimately, the animation supervisor is the person you point to when an episode has good or bad animation. It's their job to look at all of the keyframe animation in a given episode and decide whether or not it's artistically sound, and provide tweaks and changes required to make it all more in line with everything else. If you've ever seen a line drawing from like a behind the scenes bit of an animated film or show, they used to do this. I feel like if you used to watch, was it like Wonderful World of Disney back in the day? You would see a lot of those, like behind the scenes drawings
where they show it at like different stages of production and stuff.
Yeah. And if you've ever seen one of those with like red lines all over it and things noting like nose should be longer, or ears need to be bigger or smaller, something like that, That's what the animation supervisor has done. He's taken that keyframe art, he's laid a like clear sheet on top and drawn his corrections on that to show the keyframe animator, here's the changes that you need to make, because then the in-between animators will use all those keyframes to animate between the keyframes. The animation supervisor,
how that works. Their title kind of covers what it is.
Yeah, sure. So the animation supervisor is making sure everything in an episode looks the same. Yamamuro held this position mostly for the movies until Super came along. If you're the character designer and the animation supervisor, which Yamamuro has done, you're basically working on each end of the production. On the front end, you are the one creating the detailed character design sheets and the poses that the animation staff will be using as reference when they're crafting the episode of the movie. And on the back end, you're ensuring that they followed that with their keyframe animation, as those shots are the most important when deciding the look of a given episode or a movie. Perhaps when we've covered everything we have ever wanted to cover from a storytelling and inspirations point of view, we'll circle all the way back around and meticulously compare animation from episode to episode. But for now, that's just a bridge too far.
Real quick. So that little bit right there where they're prepping for the fight and the guy says, "Get him, brother." In English, he actually says, "Make your shirt explode." And it's hilarious.
Yes, he does. I love it.
This is the best fight scene ever put down on animation cells.
Two guys just blowing their shirts out.
Shirts up by flexing.
Just by flexing. And their shirts, by the way, their shirts fit them before they flexed.
Yeah, exactly. It's amazing.
It wasn't like they were wearing such ill-fitting clothes.
They're just that muscly.
Yeah, and that's... I wonder who borrowed from who in that case, or what, because like that's a Toriyama has done that.
Yeah.
With Dragon Ball, with Roshi.
I feel like it must just be like a common trope, honestly.
It is, and it you know, it's also like a wrestling thing, right? Like Hulk Hogan used to tear his shirt off and stuff like that, and so that is just a machismo thing.
Plenty of that going on right now.
Yeah. But yeah,
I also like how these guys are like always trying to be super, super macho, but you can tell that the guy's wife and then this lady here, their mother, are the ones that actually run the show.
Oh yeah, for sure. So I do respect the animation a lot, and the animators and animation supervisors and all those people. Like I think it's a hell of a job that they do, but it is just it's like too much for me to try and take in all of that right now. I just know Yamamuro is a super important figure in the way Dragon Ball looks, both currently and in the past. For most fans, even the most hardcore and into the animation teams in individual episodes, Maeda, Yamamuro, and Nakatsuru are the three most important and best animators who have worked on Dragon Ball. For most people. I'm sure other people will people who are really, really into it might say like, oh, I really like someone else. But that person is usually someone who did like maybe 10 to 15 episodes, whereas these guys did hundreds.
The bulk of it, yeah.
Yeah. And I know an unpopular animator is Uchiyama. That's a name. He did a lot of GT stuff.
Okay.
So I read through a couple of Yamamuro interviews because I know he's like an important person and I know his character designs and everything. So I figured I'd just relay some of the interesting items from there since we are a Dragon Ball podcast.
Absolutely.
And we're filling out our profiles of people who worked on the show over the years. So Yamamuro says he thinks the appeal of Goku is his easy-going spirit and lighthearted nature. Most people would allow the things the villains do get under their skin, but Goku just says, well, whatever, and does what he can to combat them. He said that when designing transformed Janemba, the very demon-looking form of Janemba from the movie Fusion Reborn, the instruction to the animation staff was simply to draw a demonic-looking character. Using that very basic instruction, Yamamuro drew the design and showed it to Toriyama, and it was signed off on without much correction at all. Yamamuro says his favorite thing about Toriyama was how he could make the characters have extremely varied silhouettes, and yet you could still tell they're from the same group. Notably, he particularly pointed out this with an example. He pointed to Toriyama's abilities with costuming and remembers that right from the bat, Bojack from the movie BoJack Unbound and his henchmen had these pirate-like designs, and they all looked very different, but they had the same boots and the same belts, and it made them look like a cohesive crew. Yamamuro always felt a kinship with Dragon Ball because he trained in Shaolin fighting arts and had always wanted to work on a martial arts show. He was unsure what he would do with his career after working on Dr. Slump, but when Dragon Ball started afterwards, he was just all on board. He was like, wait, I get to do a martial arts show? Yes! Yamamuro says that Super Saiyan 3 is actually the hardest form to draw, not because of the hair, but because Goku's face changes his appearance, and it can be easy to lose sight of the character if you alter the look in his face too much. He also says young Goku is a challenge for him because it's that rounded style, and it's not his comfort zone. As for other characters, he notes Frieza's final form is very difficult to draw because it's so simple. If you misplace a single line, it becomes so much more noticeable than on a character with a more complicated design. You can't hide your mistakes as easily.
Makes sense.
He also says he approaches drawing Goku every time like it's the last time he will, because his last work for the anime, the Dragon Ball Z portion of the anime, he thought that was it. He was like, I assumed I was done. The story was done. Everything was done. Then he was drawing for GT. Then he was drawing official art and DVDs and movie posters. And then the anime came back. And he thinks he just works his best if he approaches everything like it's the last time he'll work on it. He says that Dragon Ball's lasting impact is due to the energy that Toriyama imbued the series with, and the sense that you can draw on that energy, like a Genki Dama, and use it to inspire yourself.
I like that.
Yeah.
A wacky, almost Keystone Cops-esque chase scene here with I guess a tank train?
Tank train, yep.
Which is really highlighting what you said earlier about the the government kind of pushing its thumb down on the common people.
Yeah. And yeah. I wacky races potentially too a little bit because
yeah, I could see that.
Because why can't I think of it's something with a B. I just watched this movie. I just can't think of the character names. The mom.
Oh yeah.
But
pirate captain.
Yeah, but she has her Dola. It's not with a B at all. It's Dola.
Yeah, Dola.
But her car is already on the tracks, and then they're also pushing like one of the hand carts in front of them. And
the car is like destroying the track behind it, which I could not understand for the life of me.
No, that doesn't make much sense either. It's just a way to add, I don't know, some extra stakes or something to it.
I guess.
And yeah, it's got like that wacky racist kind of feel though, where like everything that's on this chase sequence is just almost uniquely designed to the characters in a way.
Yeah, I like that. And it just shows like just the level of attention to detail that went into this. Just like we were talking earlier about like the machine designs, and then even like this sort of like weird quarry town / mine thing. Like you can tell there's just been so much world building done with this, and then they do such an excellent job of just showcasing everything they've done and letting the viewer kind of just be smart enough to start piecing things together themselves.
Yeah.
So another Dragon Ball connection with this movie is the voice actress Mayumi Tanaka, who voices Pazu in this movie. Tanaka is best known as the voice of Monkey D. Luffy in One Piece, but in Dragon Ball she voices Yajirobe and Krillin. She also voiced Baba during Z, but not in the original or in Super. Tanaka was born on January 15th in 1955 in Shibuya in Tokyo. Her father was a newspaper reporter, and when she was 2, they moved to Osaka as he was transferred for work. From an early age, she wanted to be a performer, having a special affinity for singing, but also enjoying acting in plays. being the head of her school's productions over the years, often the main star, and frequently suggesting further plays and productions they could perform. In her elementary school days, she noted she was lightly scolded for writing in essays, quote, "I have talent and acting is my calling," end quote.
Nice.
After
Calling your shot.
Right? Nailed it. After graduating high school, she auditioned for a number of theatrical production companies, but was often rejected. After being rejected enough times, she finally worked up the courage to ask why, and she was told that she was too small and she wouldn't look good on stage because she has such small features. She would only be able to play things like fairies or children. She even applied to companies which required people to pay to be student actors, and she got rejected there as well. She became a lounge singer instead, and eventually was approached by the head of a theater company known as Theater Echo, who said she should join them as their entire troupe was just a bunch of short guys. She joined the theater troupe at the age of 23, and from there wound up discovering voice acting was an additional way to pay the bills. She gained fame from the show Urusei Yatsura, where she voiced Ryunosuke Fujinami. I'm not familiar with that show or that character.
I'm not super familiar with it either. I've heard very good things.
I'll have to check it out then. When she was in her second year of junior high school, Tanaka lost her voice during a performance and was diagnosed with a type of paralysis that forced her to communicate solely through writing, and it kind of left her heartbroken, thinking she'd have to give up theater. Her father tried to console her by telling her that there are plenty of jobs in theater beyond performing, but after researching them, she realized that what she really wanted was to stand out and perform. So it was long and difficult to regain her voice, but she credits this paralysis with finding her true calling, as she had absolutely no desire or talent for the other jobs in theater. As she even once tried writing and directing a show, and the actors all threatened to quit because she was such a poor director.
You'd think an actor would be able to direct a little bit, because
I mean, it is still a different skill set, though. I mean, I think it's entirely possible for somebody to be a skilled actor and to take like direction well, but not understand the things that the director does in order to give good direction.
Maybe. I would think an actor would at least make a good actor's director, even if they're a poor director of, like everything else.
Sure. No, yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah, because she would have acting experience, so it would stand to reason she'd be at least decent at that.
Right, but if they were like, "Nope, we're going to quit if you stay on."
It's a real vote of confidence there. Tanaka credits this movie with her casting as Luffy, as there was a wide casting call from the show that auditioned both men and women, and it was Eiichiro Oda who wound up saying the Pazu voice actor is good. So, like Masako Nozawa, Tanaka says she prefers anime voice acting to dubbing Western films, as she feels too locked into another actor's performance and not able to express herself fully in the role. She also likes performing radio dramas, which seems like a natural fit for a voice actor, honestly.
Yeah.
Tanaka says she has a bit of an inside joke with Ryusei Nakao, the Frieza voice actor who also voiced Tambourine in the original Dragon Ball. And so what she'll do is pretend to run away whenever Nakao enters a room, saying he's coming to kill me, in reference to Krillin being killed by Tambourine.
And Frieza.
And Frieza. Tanaka has her own live-action play production company called Operetta. It's still appearing on stage whenever she can, and her list of credits is insanely long and varied, which covers anime, TV, movies, live-action shows, plays, music, and, of course, audio dramas.
Yeah, she's a extremely talented person.
Absolutely.
If this were a One Piece podcast, we could do an entire episode on her, like how I'm not sure exactly if I think the episode will come out shortly after this one, but we have an entire episode upcoming about Masako Nozawa.
And it's a good one.
So, yeah, if this were a One Piece podcast, we could do the same.
I mean, we could still technically do it and just expand the scope to her whole career, since, she did play Yajirobe and Krillin, so.
I feel like we just talked about her enough. During our Castle in the Sky commentary. And she's at least the main character of this movie.
That's true. And she does an excellent job.
She does. She does a very good job. But the voice cast on both sides is good, and I'll be talking about that in a second. I really like this
sequence here. It's where you can see and it looks basically like they're looking up at stars, like they're outside.
Yes.
even though they're in a cave.
And I really like this concept of this Ethereum. This is like one of those really good world building moments where,
Yes.
like, it's in these rocks, and you can see it when you strike the rocks, and it like makes the rock glow for a moment, but then it fades away, and it's because it hasn't been like refined yet. It's just the ore. It hasn't been refined into pure Ethereum yet, and like humanity has forgotten how to do it.
And this is also like I was saying earlier, how they do show don't tell. Like even when you get exposition, it's the characters learning it themselves and starting to put pieces together. So you're learning alongside the characters, so it doesn't feel nearly as forced, and it feels way more natural.
And it comes in these nice, quiet down moments of like character building. Like, we got this moment where Pazu shares his food with Sheeta, and then they see Uncle Palm, who's just this old man who we get I don't know, I get the feeling that he's this old man that like everyone else in the village kind of just ignores at best, or maybe slightly mistreats. And Pazu is like, oh, it's Uncle Palm, he's so cool, Sure. So you get that kind of feeling that like he's this. It just helps to build the character of Pazu more and flesh him out more, as he's the one who doesn't ignore Uncle Palm. He's the one who hangs out and listens to the crazy old man stories. I like that.
Yes. So there's, oh my God, there's so much good character building and just world building in this movie.
Movies don't do that anymore, where they just stop and build characters.
So peek behind the curtain. I watched this just the other day with my wife, and we were talking about that. We were like, wow, this is such a product of its time, because movies just aren't like this anymore.
They always feel like they have to be like heavily, quickly thrusting the action forward and moving the plot along. Yes,
exactly. We're so obsessed with pacing currently in cinema. And this movie is a perfect example of like the kind of art you can achieve when you just allow the people working on it to sort of just breathe and tell the story that they want to tell, without worrying about whether it gets told quickly or if certain scenes get cut out for time or whatever.
Right. And it bothers me that we're obsessed with pacing, because we're obsessed with modern films are obsessed with like pacing, but not, I don't know, efficiency of time, I guess I'll say. Right?
Yeah.
Every scene has to be pushing fast forward.
Mm-hmm.
But then movies are still 2.5 hours long.
Yeah. So it just feels like you're just getting like a shotgun blast of information the whole time.
And it's the difference. Like a movie like this can be 2 hours long, and it doesn't quite feel like it's 2 hours long, because it's taking its time to get there. Whereas another movie can be 2 hours long. A more modern movie can be 2 hours long, and it feels like exhausting, because it's like constantly pummeling you with things.
Oh yeah.
And by the end, you just feel like your eyes have been beaten up. Voicing Sheeta is Keiko Yokozawa, who Dragon Ball fans will probably not recognize as the Japanese voice of Anon from the end of Dragon Ball with the Eightfold Furnace, the character who was based on Lao Tzu, vaguely.
Yes.
The general is voiced by Ichiro Nagai, who voices both Crane Hermit and Master Corrin. The voice of Motro, or the Old Engineer, is Ryujei Saikachi, who voices Grand Kai, the filler-only character Grand Kai from the Afterworld tournament. And the train operator is voiced by Tomomichi Nishimura, who voices the Supreme Kai of Universe 4 in Dragon Ball Super. So, hey, we wound up with a slew of Dragon Ball references then.
Sure.
So I think mission accomplished. We've talked about, we've drawn a line from our Dragon Ball podcast to a Studio Ghibli movie, which rules because it gets us a chance to talk about Studio Ghibli and how much I like them. On the dubbing side, we have one Dragon Ball veteran, kind of. Eddie Frierson, who voices the train engineer, provided the voice of Tien in the Harmony Gold dub. So the short-lived Harmony Gold dub where like Goku was renamed Zero. We talked about that dub before. Frierson is a veteran voice actor who's provided voice in a lot of things, but rarely as a character that you might actually remember, though he does play Ken in Street Fighter II, the movie.
I like that movie.
I've never seen that one.
I've seen it like a couple times. It's about what you would expect for a movie based on a fighting video game.
Do you think people who really like Street Fighter II probably like it? Is it one of those?
I don't know about because like you only get like a couple of scenes where like they use like their signature moves or whatever, and they really just try to like build up the world building around the game, I guess. So there's a lot of talk about like Shadowloo and like what Bison's doing and recruiting fighters and stuff like that. So it more or less just kind of expands on the lore of the game, and it's not really too focused. Not focused as heavily as you would think it would be based on a fighting game. Based on fighting.
I wonder what the reputation of that movie is then.
Not sure. I maybe I should look that up.
So other than that, there's not much synergy in the dub with the world of Dragon Ball, but there's a lot of talent. Disney did not go cheap on these dubs at all. And that's for all of their Ghibli dubs are voiced by like top talent. We've got Anna Paquin as Sheeta. Debbie Derryberry, voice of Jimmy Neutron, is Madge. Jim Cummings is the voice. We just saw the scene with the general arguing with Muska. Jim Cummings is the voice of the general. He did Winnie the Pooh and a million other things. Richard Dysart is voicing Uncle Palm. He's Dr. Copper from 1982's The Thing.
Okay.
So there you go. Hey, we got a spooky reference into our movie.
I like that. Nice. That's my favorite movie too.
Oh, I love that movie. It's October. Go watch that movie. If for some reason you haven't, go watch it. If you have,
the practical effects are mind bending in that movie.
Also go watch. If you've seen it, also go watch it because it's always a good idea to.
I'm gonna go watch it as soon as we're done here.
You've got Mandy Patinkin, Inigo Montoya providing a voice. Andy Dick
is also here.
We won't talk about him too much, but he does a voice. Tress MacNeille, who you would know as like she did a ton of voices like Futurama, as Tress MacNeille is in Futurama. I think a lot of Simpsons voices. Like Tress MacNeille is a well experienced voice actress. And of course, it's impossible to talk about the dub of this movie without talking about one of the great actors of our time. One of history's most iconic antagonistic performances in their first but not last Ghibli film. A fantastically well-accomplished working actor. I speak, of course, of Frau Bluka herself, Cloris Leachman as Dola.
Oh, she does such a good job, too. Like, when I hear her come out, like her voice come out from that character, I'm like, that is exactly how I would expect that character to sound based on how they looked.
Yeah. And that's obviously a joke. I will, but I do love Cloris Leachman, legitimately. I've seen her in a whole bunch of things. A lot of people have probably seen her. I mean, like I said, she's Frau Bluka in Young Frankenstein, but as she got older, she played like the old lady in a lot of things.
That's right.
If you're a big fan of The Office, you know the episode where Pam's parents are getting divorced and her and Jim are watching the movie with Andy, and it's that fake like movie with Jack Black. That's Cloris Leachman as the old lady.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah. No, but of course I was referring to Mark Hamill as Muska. That was for a bit of a gag, right? I genuinely love Cloris Leachman, but Hamill, obviously best known in terms of voice acting for voicing the Joker, and he's doing just a fantastic job in this movie. And you can hear little bits of Joker creep through a little bit, but it's definitely that more menacing version and less the manic insane, over the top. It's those moments in Batman the Animated Series where people say a good Joker is funny or scary. A great Joker is both.
Mm-hmm.
It's those moments in the animated series where Hamill gets kind of scary with it.
Yeah.
Where for a kids show, obviously, he never got too intense, but for an animated show in the early 90s on Fox TV, his Joker could at times be very menacing. Also, then, in the Mask of the Phantasm movie, because that was a theatrical movie, they let him go even a little more menacing in that one.
Yeah. And that's a good movie too.
Yes, and that's for some reason you don't know Mark Hamill was also Luke Skywalker. just floating that out there, I guess, just to make sure. I don't want anyone to miss a reference, maybe. But
I know it's a pretty deep cut. It's an old 70s sci-fi film series. You might not have heard of it.
We also had our introduction to the robots briefly. It wasn't moving, but the Laputan robot, that is a Miyazaki thing. Like that, the design of those robots is if you ask someone to just generically think of like a Miyazaki monster, they would and draw you something, they would kind of draw something close to what those robots look like.
I get that. I do really like kind of how he approaches designing mechanical stuff, because like at the beginning of the movie with the pirates on those little like almost like dragonfly like sleds, I guess you'd call them, to the military using just a gigantic flying fortress that is, in my opinion, like a bumblebee. It just shouldn't be able to fly, and it's just so. Like the way he looks at certain details, you can see, okay, no, there was definitely like some like design choices here. But at the same time, like if you look at it as a whole, it's like just this big clumsy thing and it looks like it shouldn't work. But at the same time, you kind of just buy into it. Like, yeah, no, okay, I believe that gigantic flying fortress can actually fly. Sure, I'll buy into that.
It's that kind of look too that has made in years after, the steampunk community has really flocked to this movie.
Yeah.
Even though it's not super steampunky, because steampunk tends to be more retro futuristic, and this doesn't really have that futurism vibe down super well, but it's got little elements of that. We're gonna pivot here and start talking about Ghibli and Miyazaki, but before we do that, I'm just going to say that with Ghibli, you're extremely hard pressed to go wrong, and at least if the movie is directed by Hayao Miyazaki or Isao Takahata, and emphasis on Hayao Miyazaki, because his son Goro has directed a few movies, and frankly, they are all consistently among Ghibli's lesser, or in a couple cases, even outright bad offerings. The Earwig and the Witch movie, I believe that it's called, that he directed, I hated a lot.
I don't even think I've seen that one.
It's like really, really awfully CG animated. It's an off-putting and ugly movie, and it also doesn't have a good story.
I did just remember something else from the English voice cast that we hadn't mentioned yet. It's Joe DiMaggio, the guy that does the voice of Bender in Futurama, also has a small part in this movie.
Oh, okay.
He's one of I can't remember if he's one of the pirates or like or John DiMaggio. Yes, sorry, not Joe DiMaggio. That's crazy.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, it'd be cool, but no, that's completely the wrong DiMaggio I'm thinking of. But yeah, he had like a part as like either like a soldier or like one of these pirates. I couldn't remember which specifically, but yeah, that was another one we missed.
Oh, he's cool. I like him.
So yeah, let's get into Ghibli at least a little bit. They were officially founded in June of 1985, with the name Ghibli being chosen by Miyazaki, as it was the nickname for an Italian scout plane, and he's a huge fan of aircrafts. Yeah, geez, I wonder where he got the idea for this movie. Also, the word means hot desert wind, and Miyazaki wanted his studio to blow new wind through the anime industry. Though, as mentioned, the studio got off to a bit of a rocky start, with Castle in the Sky not being very well received initially. Both Miyazaki and Takahata were established successful directors with a strong track record, and they were able to secure enough financing for future efforts. And luckily, their second attempt, a double bill of My Neighbor Totoro and Grave of the Fireflies, was not the box office failure of Castle in the Sky. So
what
Ghibli
a
was,
double bill, by the way.
yeah, that's wow, that is a tonal whiplash right there.
We've mentioned Grave of the Fireflies on this show a couple times, but just as a refresher, it is about like two kids trying to survive after they become orphaned when their mother is burned alive during the Tokyo firebombings during World War II, and they clash with like their aunt who takes them in, who thinks they are ungrateful, and they try and live on their own, and they suffer through like malnutrition and starvation. It is a heart-wrenching movie. And then My Neighbor Totoro is this very light,
like fanciful
it's like two kids are moving out to the country because I think the idea is the mom has tuberculosis. I don't 100% know, but they're moving out to the country because like their mom can't live in the city anymore, which just, that's like a thing that they did with tuberculosis, is like they've assumed
you gotta
that
get out and get fresh air. Yeah.
The city air was so bad for you that you could only live in the country where the air was clean and fresh. And they are just trying to make sense of being ripped out of their old lives, and they fall into this like fanciful world of the forest spirits, the forest yokai, and one of which is Totoro, who's just this giant thing.
I guess he'd be a cat, right?
Kind of?
Or something similar? Anyways.
Like a cat, chipmunk, raccoon thing?
Yeah, it's like a combination of a few things in my opinion, but that seems about right.
But also with Totoro, yeah, it's like there's so much about it, and I've watched it like a couple of times. There's a lot about it that makes me feel like it is very much like the Winnie the Pooh of Japan.
I could see that.
I feel like it's the type of movie, because I watched The Many Adventures. I feel like I'm just talking about Winnie the Pooh. This is welcome to Poohcast.
Not Winnie the Pooh, not other Pooh.
But I watched the Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh all the time as a kid, and I feel like I would have done the same if I was a kid in Japan with Totoro. It has that same vibe. He has his own song that's like very much like the Winnie the Pooh. It's like Totoro, like it fits.
Sure. I mean, there's a reason why Miyazaki's considered the Walt Disney of Japan, right?
Mm-hmm.
So with the success of Totoro and Grave of the Fireflies, Ghibli was off and running and had a string of hits over the years that would eventually lead to Disney, which we just mentioned, forming a partnership with Ghibli to be the sole international distributor of its films in exchange for financing 10% of the studio's production costs. Ghibli is known for a no-edits policy with their films, aside from producing a dub, as Miyazaki was left extremely disappointed by the way his prior film, Nausicaa and the Valley of the Wind, was handled by international distribution teams when they cut 22 minutes of the movie. They changed character names and renamed the movie Warriors of the Wind. Now, this partnership was ultimately extremely beneficial to Ghibli on the international stage, as Disney helped build the Miyazaki name internationally until about 2001, roughly. They were marketing movies with his name prominently, culminating in Spirited Away becoming the first non-English language animated movie to win the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature in 2002 at the 75th Awards ceremony. Since the award's creation, it's remained one of the only hand-drawn movies to win the award, with the only other hand-drawn movie to win the award being another Miyazaki movie, The Boy and the Heron, which is on my list now to get done as soon as possible. And then also Into the Spider-Verse had some hand-drawn elements as well.
But I don't think it's considered a hand-drawn movie. It just has some of those elements that are hand-drawn.
I would agree with that. Yeah, it's definitely a CG movie.
Yeah, and that's the award for best animated feature is a thing that came out, like, it took them a long time to start doing it, but one of the reasons it happened was because Beauty and the Beast in, God, what year was that? Like 92, 93?
I was going to say, I think 92.
Was nominated for best film, like best feature film at the Oscars, and didn't win. And everyone was like, everyone kind of thought this movie should have won something.
Yeah.
and it got snubbed for best picture. And so after then more years of that happening, you know, with like various Disney movies basically kind of getting snubbed for Oscars over the years.
Yeah.
It was the Academy felt pressured enough to create best animated feature, which is a tough, it's been like a double-edged sword in some ways, because now all animated movies, no matter how good they are only ever considered as like best
for
animated
that category
feature.
Yeah,
they never get any higher consideration than that. But
which just seems like a snubbing of animation in general.
Yeah. The first movie to win was actually only in 2001. That's when the award was created, and it was Shrek. But yeah, it's been now going for 23 more years, and Spirited Away and The Boy and the Heron are the only two hand-drawn movies that have won best animated feature.
Wild. So
not to say that there's not a couple that have been worked on by hand, because Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio won, and that isn't hand drawn, but it's
that stop animation or whatever.
Yeah, and then there was like another one, I can't remember. There's another one on the list. Like I think there's a couple of the Laika movies. I think
probably like Kubo, and I'm thinking maybe Coraline.
Yeah, which again, not hand drawn, but definitely worked on by hand.
I think that's kind of a shame, honestly, because like animation's something I enjoy because everything that you're seeing on the screen is intentional. Right. There's no magic performance that like changes the quality of a movie. There's no actor's performance that elevates anything, and everything that you see is completely intentional. What you're looking at is what the director wants to show you. Yes. Almost like beamed directly from their brain.
Right. And there's no, like, I don't know, there's no, like, okay, one of the things people, like, just to, like you said, like, everything is intentional. Mm-hmm. One of the things people have picked up on in Jaws over the years is there's various moments where you can see shooting stars.
Oh, yeah?
Those just happened to be in the movie. Mm-hmm. As they were filming. There's like, it just happened to be that there were some shooting stars that flew past the camera. That doesn't happen in an animated feature.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. Yeah.
Nobody
planned
star
that.
accidentally blows through the thing. In, I think, Blazing Saddles, when the fight breaks out, the huge brawl breaks out at the end, there's this really funny thing, if you're paying attention, where there's like, as there's this huge brawl going on, there's this old man that's just like casually walking across the street. Mel Brooks had like told the guy like 15 times to stay out of their shot, and the guy was just like, I was hungry and I wanted to go get some food, and just walked through their shot. And Brooks like just thought it was hilarious that this old man was just walking and just kept it in the movie. But you don't get stuff like that in an animated feature. It just, like you said, it's everything has to be intentional.
So in 2011, Disney opted not to distribute the film from Up on Poppy Hill due to dealing with potential incest. And G-Kids, an independent releasing studio, swooped in and picked up those rights. So this provided G-Kids with a foothold in Ghibli, and they went on to distribute all the Ghibli movies that Disney found too mature or unmarketable for American audiences. Only Yesterday, Ocean Wave, The Tale of Princess Kaguya, and When Marnie Was There. Ultimately, this led to Disney relinquishing the home video rights to G-Kids, who now handle all theatrical and home media distribution of Ghibli films in North America. This constant competition over the rights to release these movies is a huge part of why these movies rarely go out of print in the US and can be found on multiple releases on the same formats. Everyone kind of wants a piece of the Ghibli pie, and Ghibli's really not very loyal to a single parent company.
Yeah, and I was reading a little bit about the G-Kids Disney thing, and it was like Disney opted not to release something, and so another company was able to come in and be like, "Oh, we'll do this one because who cares? We'll get our foot in the door, you know."
Yeah.
And I don't know if like Disney broke some contractual obligation, or maybe there was a clause that said, "Hey, if you decide not to distribute something, it opens up everything else." Like. So I just found that interesting. Of the movies mentioned there, From Up on Poppy Hill, Only Yesterday, Ocean Waves, The Tale of Princess Kaguya, and When Marnie Was There, I actually have seen all of them. It's kind of incredible to me that G-Kids kind of, I don't know, was able to leverage those into kind of having control of Ghibli releasing, because the only one of those that I actually like is The Tale of Princess Kaguya.
Okay. Well, I wonder if it has something to do with Miyazaki's like no editing philosophy, and I wonder if maybe he saw Disney not releasing a film as like them kind of maybe censoring him a little bit.
Maybe. Only Yesterday is a Takahata movie. Ocean Waves is this. Ocean Waves is one of those movies that's like more interesting to talk about than it is to watch, where they gave like all of the understudies at Ghibli at the time. They were like, "Hey, how about you guys make a movie?" And then it went way long on production schedule and way over budget and all this stuff. And like it's like it blows my mind that it went all way long on that, because it's like it is the Ghibli movie with like the least amount of imaginative fantasy in it. It's just like about students at like a high school.
Oh. Well, I guess that's why they're the understudies.
And then the Tale of Princess Kaguya is awesome. That's a Takahata movie. It's got a really awesome style to it. It's got like a watercolor-esque style to it almost. It's beautiful. It's one of those that the Tale of Princess Kaguya is a story that is like very well known to Japanese audiences. It's the moon princess who lives in the bamboo shoot thing.
Okay.
If you don't know what I was just talking about, then don't worry about it. If you do, then you kind of get a feel for what Princess Kaguya is about.
It's like an Easter egg.
Yeah. So as
Mr.
for
Robot,
this sequence is just fantastic.
Hectic and chaotic, and just I really like the lighting that they do on the animation in these scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Just because everything's lit from below, which is not normally what you would expect, obviously, because sun's in the sky. But they do such a good job of like, you know how you do that effect that you can get if like you hold a flashlight under your face when you're telling a scary story, and it's supposed to like make it like it kind of makes everything take on sort of a sinister feel to it.
Yeah,
which is it's absolutely appropriate for what's going on in the story.
Right. Yeah. We didn't talk about it too when it started, because we were talking about whatever else. I like when the robot like reanimates, the circuitry inside of him like comes alive too.
Mm-hmm.
It very much gives that feel of like this Laputan society is something that was way beyond.
Yeah.
What even we have now, because the society that Pazu and Shida live in is a weird mix of like less than what we have now, because they're living in like castles and things, and also a little bit more because they have like personal flying devices
and giant floating fortresses.
Yeah. But generally speaking, it's a less advanced civilization, and the robot then animating the way that it does just gives it feel. This is way beyond. This is way beyond.
It makes it, and then also the way that it carries itself, where it starts off like climbing on or crawling around on all fours, and like, you know, gets stuck in a doorway and has to like blow itself out. Just kind of really lends an otherworldly quality to it.
Yeah, it's great stuff. So as for Ghibli's main man himself, Hayao Miyazaki, he was born on January 5th, 1941 in Tokyo City. And we've actually talked a little bit about his rise to prominence over the years via our other discussions. We've mentioned like a few times, oh, guess what? He was a key animator on this, or he did in-between animation on this. Mm-hmm. He started working as an animator on Toei movies at the age of 22, notably having worked on movies like Puss in Boots, where Ghibli gets their mascot Perrault, or not Ghibli, Toei, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Where Toei gets their mascot Perrault, that from the movie Puss in Boots. And he did in-between art and key animation on projects such as Wolf Boy Ken and Doggy March, which helped launch the Toei manga Matsuri. If you came out and saw us at one of our conventions this year, you potentially saw us talk about that one. If you saw us in Fan Expo Denver or San Japan, then you saw us talk about the start of the Toei manga Matsuri and how it was linked to those two movies. I will make sure that one of those gets uploaded at some point. It will probably be San Japan. Our recorder wasn't working during Fan Expo Denver, and the audio to me sounds like garbage. I'll try to save it, but we'll see.
So for all you people that were listening to us in Denver, exclusive content just for you guys. Congratulations.
Miyazaki helped co-direct the first Lupin III animated feature, and as such, when it came time for his own feature film debut as director, it was on a Lupin movie, which is The Castle of Cagliostro. And I like that movie. I've seen it. If you've seen that, then you would probably like the more recent Lupin movie directed by Takashi Yamazaki, who was the director of Godzilla -1, because his Lupin movie is like very, very similar to Castle of Cagliostro.
We're like halfway through this movie. I was worried we weren't going to get a Godzilla reference in there.
We're trying. We're figuring that out. I love Godzilla -1. If we want to talk about that, it's like my favorite Godzilla movie.
We could have a Godzilla -1 podcast in the middle of our Castle in the Sky commentary.
It's like my favorite Godzilla movie of the last 20 years, easily. After a string of successes, though, Miyazaki and Isao Takahata co-founded Ghibli. Miyazaki is a noted cantankerous old man. I love it. He has openly criticized the animation industry, in particular Japanese animation, claiming it deprioritizes realism and fetishizes guns and violence. And I know we were talking about how, realism, this movie's so unrealistic, but like Bekinney said, he thinks of a real way it could all work.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely emphasizes realism in the way his characters interact.
Absolutely.
His characters feel like real people.
And and the way they bounce off each other and the way scenes progress that just are built off of their little quirks and stuff are excellently done.
Right. Miyazaki is he has openly said that other animation studios show, quote, nothing but contempt for their audiences, unquote, even pointedly openly criticizing Disney.
Nice.
It's amazing that they had such a working relationship for such a long time.
They probably made that work because he wasn't the one actually doing the meetings. They insulated Disney by putting a few people in between them.
He makes it a point to have messages and themes to his works, most often environmentalism, feminism, love, family, and pacifism. His pacifism is of particular importance to him, with him often noting that his heroes do not destroy evil, but rather they acquire the ability to survive in spite of said evil. And yes, if you watch a lot of Miyazaki movies, you'll note that there's not usually a huge climactic showdown. There might be a showdown between the good and the evil, but like the good characters don't like punch the evil one into the sun to, you know, talk about Broly. They like get a slight upper hand in the battle and then run away, and then the villain like,
or they find a way to sort of like depower what the villain is doing.
Yeah.
Like just to sort of not like, and like he was saying, like they don't destroy the villain. They just remove his ability to continue to hurt others, I guess you'd say.
Right. That's like a big thing in Spirited Away. Not to get too spoily on that one. That movie's awesome though.
It is a good one.
But yeah, he has been openly critical with his pacifism being such a driving force for him of the Japanese government and of films and filmmakers that he believes push nationalistic views. He's been extremely critical, actually, of Takashi Yamazaki, the director of Godzilla -1, and in particular, he's critical of the author whose works Yamazaki has at times adapted, Naoki Hyakuta, who's a conservative leader in Japan who is a war crimes denier and proponent of altering the Japanese constitution to allow for rearmament of Japan. Miyazaki's staunch belief in pacifism doesn't stop at his movies or his criticism of his home country either. He chose not to attend his Academy Award presentation due to the United States' involvement in the Iraq War in 2002.
Okay. Well, at least he stands by his principles. I can respect him for that alone.
So he's a very principled person, and yes, if you've ever seen him, like in an interview, he is not shy about his principles. He is not shy about speaking out. He was shown 3D anime at one point and was like, the anime industry was a mistake.
I think I've seen that one. I think I've seen that one.
And so, yeah, his creative process is different than most animators and directors of animated films in that he doesn't utilize a traditional screenplay like most animators and animation directors do. Instead, he crafts narratives as he storyboards. He likes to keep working on the story as the film develops and is a big believer in 2D animation. And yeah, he called the entire animation industry a mistake when he first saw computer-generated animation. And despite his vocal critiques of like pretty much everyone and everything, he does enjoy certain things and take influence from others, notably Osamu Tezuka, Lewis Carroll, Nick Park, who is the man behind Wallace and Gromit, Roald Dahl, and he has said that the 1957 animated Soviet film The Snow Queen is the true catalyst behind his drive to work in animation. He has been called both the Disney of Japan and the Kurosawa of animation, which highlights his importance and legacy with the former comparison, Disney, and his strenuous attention to detail and refusal to accept anything less than perfection with the latter comparison. And he has said that extends to sort of all manner of his life. He has said he is a bad father. He has said it of himself. And then his son in interviews says he gets failing marks as a father, but beyond perfection as an animator and a boss.
I thought my relationship with my parents was complicated.
But so yeah, that's like all we really had prepared for this, and we still got solid half hour left in this, right?
I'm looking at about 50 minutes right now, I think.
Oh boy. I love Ghibli movies. And we could talk just in general about them. I love, and I especially love Miyazaki movies. I love the whimsy of his movies and that sort of melancholic feel to them. And I pick up on the environmentalism big time. And this movie is one that definitely has that environmentalist theme running through it that goes all the all the way back to those opening credits where you see the it's the flashback of like how the Laputan Society kind of came to prominence, but they're like essentially strip mining the earth. At one point in this, there's that one shot as they're flying away and you see like all the craters all over the ground.
Yeah.
And that to me, just like, that's that world building, and that hits on that environmentalist message that like, this is a world that has been like,
that's been scarred by people pursuing science and technology over everything else, essentially.
Yes. It's been plundered. It's been pillaged. It's been scarred. And, you know, we get into things like whether or not humanity deserves to have the technology that they yearn for in this movie. And there's a lot of that really good environmentalist work in this movie.
I really like this scene because this is another one of those instances where they take something that they have to do, which is like this kind of back and forth between these two characters, but then they put a spin on it where we're now watching a third character sort of overhearing their conversation and like reacting to it as they're talking, which I thought like was such a fantastic way to do this, where you could have this moment between these two kids, but at the same time, like, get more information out of this by seeing other characters' reaction to this conversation.
Mm-hmm. And it also then provides a reason for this character to change.
Yeah.
For Dola this whole time has been
a bit of a hard ass.
Yes. She's definitely, we see, and this provides the final push for her to go over the edge into being like one of the kind of heroes of the movie, basically. But we have seen that she is a little bit kind of like the thief with a heart of gold type of thing throughout the movie.
Sure. You can see examples of it, like going all the way back to when Sheeta first got like re-abducted by the government, and she allows Ponzu to like join her in a rescue effort.
Mm-hmm.
Like no actual pirate be like, no, you're gonna be dead weight, kid. I'm not gonna bring you along.
Right. Yeah, and she at one point they have him like tied up, and he's like, I just want to save her, and she's like, will you give me the stone? And he's like, I just want to save her, and she's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, as long as it doesn't get in the way of me getting what I want.
Right. So she's got that. She's not like unreasonable. She's got a more, even though she's a thief who wants this stone and definitely wants to plunder Laputa for its gold and its treasures, she's got a moral compass.
Yeah.
And it's this conversation between the two characters then that causes her to let that moral compass outweigh her desires.
Yeah, okay, I could see that, definitely. I just kind of really like the whole arc for Dola and her crew, where they start off as antagonists and eventually become allies and help save the day.
I like that too.
Because the real enemy is the government.
I do think the pirates provide, if you're, a more modern day American viewer, one of the more like slightly more uncomfortable moments of the movie, which we've like just passed it, where when Sheeta is working in the kitchens and like they keep like coming in while she's in there,
it comes off a little creepy. Definitely.
It can come off a little creepy. I think it's intended, especially when you know more about Miyazaki and his views on like even having romantic angles in his movies in general. I think what the intention is like, she's such a nice person. She's so positive. She's so pleasant to be around, that these pirates who are constantly surrounded by other rough, gruff and tumble people and
become gentler, nicer people.
and also there's their mom Dola. They all call her mom.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's meant to be literally or if it's like, oh, we're a family type of thing. But they're around these rough people all the time, and they get to be around someone who's more gentle, more uplifting, more kind, and they just want to be around that person more.
Sure.
And not, I tend not to read it as creepy.
I try to give it the benefit of the doubt, and it's not, in my own head, it's not like a sexual thing. It's more like they're just like fond of her as a kid, and they just want to help her out. But there are some lines in I think they changed some lines between the Japanese and the English. So like when I watched it in English, I think that was more the vibe they were going for. I don't know if that would match up the same with the dialogue from this version though.
Yeah, knowing though, like I said, knowing what Miyazaki felt about like the romantic angles, it makes me I tend to read it more
Like
a little
platonic.
more innocently.
Yeah,
a little more platonically, a little more. They just don't. Maybe they don't know any other way to behave around someone.
Also, they're just basically in a tin can strapped to a kite being pulled by an airplane. This is just wild to me that this scene even happens.
This is great stuff.
This is probably the only part of the movie where like I kind of my suspension of disbelief got broken a little bit because I was like, there's no way that would work properly. Especially when you see it like flipping around and going upside down and stuff. I'm like, those kids just fell out of that bucket and died.
Do they talk in this movie at all about Gulliver's Travels?
I don't think so. I don't recall that. Unless at some point after.
That was in an Ultraman show I was watching recently, actually, where they were talking about Gulliver's Travels. Because like a character was like, oh, I think I've traveled dimensions. And they're like, oh, just like the character in Gulliver's Travels? And I was like, different dimensions. But the Laputa is actually the name of an island in Gulliver's Travels.
Or are you thinking of Lilliput?
But it's also, like, I think it's like also named Laputa. I think it depends on...
Oh, like your translation?
I think.
I could see that.
Laputa was located above the realm of Balnibarbi, which was ruled by its king from the Flying Island. Gulliver states that the island flew via... So it's not Lilliput, because Lilliput is where the...
it's a completely... Okay, I get you.
Lilliput is where the little people tie him down, right?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because the names are kind of similar.
Yeah. So Miyazaki borrowed the name because it also was a flying island.
Makes sense. This scene with the hurricane's pretty nuts, and there's some absolutely gorgeous animation here. One thing I do wanted to point out that I thought was really cool is like when you look at the way the clouds are spinning, not so much in this section here, but like that wide shot where it's just kind of showing like a mass of clouds like slowly spinning. It looks like the clouds are like a texture that's just being slid behind a cloud cutout on a blue background. So instead of like the clouds being like the thing in the forefront and the background being the background, it's like they use the background to help shape the cloud, and then they just use like a moving texture to sort of show the motion. That's a gorgeous shot right there too.
Oh yeah. We could just say that.
Just like this is one of those movies where it's like every frame's a painting just about.
Yeah, it is. It's really, really good stuff.
Yeah, like right here, if you look at the edge where the blue is, it kind of looks like it's just like a cloud texture that they're sort of moving through this cutout.
Yeah.
And I think they do this a couple different times with a few different things, but I thought it was a really innovative way for them to do something like a really complicated high motion shot like that.
Mm-hmm. And it's really interesting. So this is a movie, like there's all these flying machines, there's a flying island, there's a lot of like aircraft both actually flown and like built or shown or things like that. This is one of those movies, like, Miyazaki has an affinity for flight and for aircrafts, and that actually, I don't know about spilled over, but, like, he made a movie in 2013 called The Wind Rises, which is about the creation of the Japanese Zero. It's a biopic
cool.
about the engineer Jiro Horikoshi, who created the Zero. It juxtaposes, like, the historical events with like a fictional romance that Miyazaki kind of created, but it's meant to be like a biopic of this guy, and it's all about, like, creating this plane. And so it's interesting, or some people might find it interesting. Some people might potentially say hypocritical for Miyazaki to make a movie about the guy who invented the Zero while being very anti-war and very pacifist. But I think if you watch that movie, he makes it pretty clear that, like, at least
turns out the man just loves planes.
At least in his interpretation of this Horikoshi, he just, like Miyazaki, was, so it's almost like like a bit of an autobiography in that.
Okay.
He just is very interested in flight and flying and creating, like, the perfect streamlined thing and creating the perfect flying machine. It's only later on, when it's, like, used as an instrument of war, that he's like, oh no, what have I done? As
nice
opposed
shot
to
here of Pazu following in his father's footsteps, just really quick.
Yeah. Yes, I love the lightning and, like, going down that corridor.
Yeah, that's a good shot.
But yeah, it's Miyazaki kind of comes out with that. He really just wanted to create a plane, and it just happened to be used for war, because of course that's what humanity uses everything that they perfect for.
Yeah, I was about to say, we turn everything into a weapon. That's not surprising.
And hell, this movie gets into that too, right? The Laputians, I guess, have created this perfect thing, this society that can go above the earth, and it's this great utopia with all this great technology on it. And what do we ever see of the actual technology of it, though? Is the robots that can destroy anything, and the giant cannons underneath that are used for, like, destroying things. And so yeah, we've created this beautiful thing, but it becomes a tool of war. That's
definitely
thing.
a running theme in humanity, that's for sure.
And that's a running theme with Miyazaki, and that's where he calls that author who wrote the movie The Eternal Zero, like, he calls him, like, he's so critical. He calls him, like, an awful person just constantly. And that's where Miyazaki called The Eternal Zero like a travesty. And I think I've talked about The Eternal Zero before. It's a really good movie, but the ending is, like, super uncomfortable. It's a movie that, for large chunks of its running time, you could potentially interpret as, no, this isn't, like, pro Japan, pro nationalism, pro
kamikazes. And then it throws all that out the window at the end, doesn't it?
Basically, yeah.
Fantastic.
Like, large chunks of the movie are about how the kamikaze missions didn't achieve anything and all this stuff, and the main character of the movie is told in flashbacks, and basically it's all about him making these personal connections with people, and to where he volunteers to go on a kamikaze run so that they don't have to, so that he can like save their lives. But at the end, just the way that it's played is like you feel like you're supposed to be rooting for him to like hit the boat.
Even though that flies in the face of everything that's been talked about up to that point.
Yeah, and you're like, eh. There's also like
I don't know how I feel about this movie now.
There's also a part where one of the characters goes out to dinner with his friends, and they're like, "Oh, I feel bad for kamikaze pilots. They were brainwashed into like killing themselves for a pointless cause, and he gets like really pissed off. He's like, "What do you mean?" Blah blah, and it's like, you've just been learning about that. Like, so there's like two big things that fly in the face of what the movie could potentially otherwise be doing, and they're two big things. The movie, I think, also tones down some of the nationalism of the book because the book is written by this guy who's very right wing.
It happens.
It does, and Miyazaki's just openly critical of those people. He doesn't care.
It's one of those things where the art is complicated, and trying to separate like the art from the artist and all that stuff really just doesn't make it any simpler.
No. Yeah.
I do like, so now that we're on Laputa, the change in color palette slightly. There's a lot more things like flowers, like you were saying earlier. There's almost kind of like a idyllic or utopic kind of feel to this place.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually we'll get the bait and switch towards the end that this is basically just like a giant flying weapon.
Yeah. Miyazaki has said he's retired. Just talk a little bit more about. He's said he's retired multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
And then said, "Oh, I'm gonna do one more, and then one more, and then one." So like, he's at a.
I like to believe that he's 100% serious when he says it's my last one, and then he just somehow gets roped back into it again.
Yeah, I think he intended Ponyo to be his last one, and then he came back to do The Wind Rises. I think because they allowed him. Like that was the one that he always wanted to do. And then he was done, and then he was like, "Actually, one more."
And they're like, "Oh, you want to print more money? Okay, we won't stop you."
Of his movies, like I said, Castle of Cagliostro is good. Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind is awesome. Laputa, the Castle in the Sky is really good. My Neighbor Totoro is good. Kiki's Delivery Service is his weakest for me. I don't vibe with it that much.
I would agree with that. It's weird to say, but I feel like the storyline's almost a little too small scale.
Yeah.
If it makes sense.
Porco Rosso is like my underrated one. Like you never hear anyone talk about Porco Rosso, and
most people forget about it, yeah.
And I really like it. Princess Mononoke is fantastic. It's like maybe his magnum opus, I think.
I was going to say, I think that's usually the one most people would bring up is that, or like Spirited Away.
Spirited Away is also fantastic. My kids love Spirited Away. Howl's Moving Castle, I think, you come from those two that I think are like masterpieces, is a step down from those.
Yeah.
I think it's still good. Ponyo, I like.
Ponyo's a fun movie, in my opinion.
The Wind Rises is very good. And then I haven't seen The Boy and the Heron yet. I need to see that one.
I've heard it's really good. But I mean, that's what I've come to expect from Miyazaki, so it's not
I've heard
surprising.
some good things and some not great things, so I'm like, as long as it's good, I'm sure it'll be fine.
I think it'll be at least entertaining.
With this, one of the things I love about the sort of, I guess, third act of this movie really is this idea of like nature is reclaiming Laputa.
Yeah. I also like we just passed probably like one of my favorite shots in the movie. So there's a comment that they make where it's like, "Oh, the walls are transparent," and then you get this exterior shot through a window where you can see the two characters standing next to a tree, and you can see that from the outside the walls are not transparent.
Yeah.
So it's like they're like one way, and they just do it just like a quick camera shift to kind of like give you that explanation.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got another robot. This one immobile.
Yeah, and then you get
and like you said, sort of like being reclaimed by nature. And then we get this shot here with even more growing underneath the tree. Definitely heavy on the environmentalism, like you said.
Yeah, very much. Especially like you look, you get that from far away it looks like just a tree, and then you get closer and closer, and like these robots are being like overtaken by the tree. Really good stuff.
Almost like they were fertilizer for the tree, really. Like it seems to be sort of growing out of a pile of them.
Yeah, kinda. The movie has had like multiple different scores. Hasashi did some extended scores or some slight alterations to the score for the dub, I guess. And the American soundtrack is 2 hours long, while the original Japanese score is just an hour long. So he did a lot to expand the score.
Oh, that's impressive.
This movie is consistently ranked in like a top 100 anime movies of all time. It's got a... It's one of those things where one of the faults of Rotten Tomatoes is how it, like, older movies just don't get aggregated at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the movie has a 96% on Rotten Tomatoes with 28 reviews.
Only 28?
Yeah, it's like older movies just don't get aggregated.
Oh, okay.
Like, I don't know, it's dumb. Because, yeah, new movie comes out, it'll have like 400 reviews within a week.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. So this part coming up here, I was a little annoyed with the kids and how they went about trying to like rescue the pirates, but on like thinking about it and like watching it now a second time, I got it like they're kids. Of course, they're not going to come up with the best plan. Like I caught myself like, no, just because they did something stupid doesn't mean it was bad writing. No, they're kids. They're going to do their best, but I mean, we're assuming this is some sort of functional military, so of course they're going to be a little bit harder for those kids to overtake.
Everyone would assume that they're functional military.
So what I got from this whole involvement with the military and stuff is more like this guy's just using the military to get what he wants.
Muska?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, so he doesn't care about any of the wealth or any of the stuff that's on this place. He's just using that as like the motivation to get military backing.
So Hideki Anno, who's the Neon Genesis Evangelion director, has said that he was very much inspired from having worked with Miyazaki on the production of Nausicaa, The Valley of the Wind, and then people have noted that one of his television series, Nadia, Secret of Blue Water.
Okay.
Which he was like helped create, is very similar to Castle in the Sky, and Anno has never like confirmed that, but he did say that it was taken from having worked with Miyazaki. So
nice.
We can presume that while they were working together on Nausicaa, Miyazaki was like, "Hey, listen, I got this idea for like a castle floating around in the sky. I think I'll call it the city that couldn't land."
Just ripped it right off.
Castle in the Sky is the inspiration behind the Final Fantasy video game series.
Really? I did not know that.
Is a major influence on the series' airships.
Oh, yeah, no, that makes sense. Because so one of the things that I do really like about this movie is that, like, even though they're airships, there's still very much an emphasis on the ship part of it, where like travel is a lot slower than what you would expect for actual air travel, and everything involving the airships feels more like a traditional like pirate movie.
Okay.
Where there's like downtime on the ship, the crew's getting to know each other. Like the military's flying fortress feels more like one of those big galleons that like the British Navy would have with all the cannons on it and stuff.
Okay, and that's very much like when they're hanging out with Dola and the pirate crew, which I believe they're just called like the Dola Gang. That is like, it very much feels like just a ship of pirates. Like, oh, swab the decks and clean this and go to the galley and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And I like it because it's a great way to just introduce those scenes that we were talking about earlier, where it's just like characters interacting with each other, and it's like a little bit of like slice of life in this crazy world that they've created.
Yeah. What Pazu just did, I like, and he just does it casually.
He's absolutely insane.
Yes.
He's absolutely insane. But then again, these kids were flying around in a tin can strapped to a kite, so I guess I shouldn't be surprised.
And then Muska here grabbing Sheeta by her hair. That's
the second time, by the way, that she gets caught by her pigtail in the movie. And I thought it was, I believe earlier on when in the chase scene involving the trains and stuff, I believe somebody grabbed her by a pigtail, if I remember correctly. So there you go, folks. Pigtail's bad idea when you're trying to get away from bad guys.
Yeah.
Casual fart joke.
Minecraft takes inspiration from the robots in the film for their iron golem.
Iron golems. I could see that. Yep. They got a very similar silhouette where it's like very, very chesty and top heavy with long arms.
And in particular, in Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, because it also features a flying castle.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And then a film historian has argued that, and is something Napier, I'm not sure what his first name is.
I love that she had a grenade launcher stashed away in her pant leg. Like, nobody patted her down?
But there's a film historian who has argued, and I could see this too, actually, when you think about it, that the like opening act of Pixar's WALL-E is inspired by like the third act of this, like a lone robot.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Sort of nurturing and caring for this world that's been abandoned. That I really love that with the first robot that we see when we get to Laputa, with it's the robot that like has moss growing on him and stuff.
And he comes out there just to move their little glider because it had like landed on a bird's nest or something.
Yes. You get this feeling that these robots are still, at least when we first get here, because we get some reveals in a minute here, but there's a few robots left, and they mostly just sit and gather like dust and get moss grown on them and probably birds' nests, and the animals probably come to just see them as part of the topography. And then, like, if I'm not saying that planes fall out of the sky and land in their birds' nests all the time, but like if something goes wrong, you know, it but it comes to life.
Yeah, like it's aware of it and it goes to address the issue.
Yeah. And just sort of just comes to life for that. That has a very Halo-esque feel to me.
Yeah, I could see that. So like the whole Halo facility doesn't really like fire up and turn on until there's like people on it.
Right. And it's only the monitor 343 Guilty Spark
yeah.
who like does anything. And actually, like, if you get into the Halo like lore and the terminal, like if you go and visit the terminals in the game, they're all like about how he basically is just like one of the reasons when the Master Chief gets there that 343 Guilty Spark is like so manic and crazy is because he is over millennia like gone like stir crazy basically.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because he just lives a boring life all the time.
It's like I think the character's name is Benny in what's that pirate novel with Long John Silver? Why can I not remember the name?
Treasure Island?
Yes, Treasure Island. There's the character who's like left on the island with the treasure. I think his name's Benny, and he's been like in isolation for so long that when the crew of the Hispaniola shows up, he's like weird and doesn't know how to interact with other people.
Yeah. I love how villainous Muska gets, you know, and how
just straight up like laughably evil.
And his like he hates that the trees and the environment has started to, you know, creep in on the technology, and
he's like roughly pulling back the vines and breaking things and ripping up plants and stuff. Like he's literally just the characterization of like we should be kind to nature because otherwise you're just evil.
Yeah, he is the antithesis of like the movie's point.
He's like the character that kicks a puppy just so that we know he's the bad guy.
He's like constantly just killing his own men.
Yeah, like right here, like all these guys could fall off and die. He doesn't care. He's got what he wants.
Also, here again, Pazu just
like a much braver man than I. That is for sure.
the first time I ever watched this, I like had like my butt cheeks clenched the whole time
because you can't even see the ground. They're so high.
And he's like hanging on a vine,
and it's like slowly pulling off the side of the castle.
Yeah, crazy stuff.
Absolute insanity. I give him all the props.
It's so well done. You know, the sense of, I guess I'll say geography, like how high in the sky they are.
The sense of scale. Like they sell sense of scale in this movie so well.
That you're like scared as he's like hanging around in the underside of this giant city. You're like, oh my, please get to the ground, please.
Please get somewhere safe, kid. You're making me worry. Yeah, but again, that little peek behind the curtain. I watched this with my wife, and that was one of the things we talked about was the sense of scale just being impressive. And then the other thing we talked about was actually the name of Laputa itself, which for those of you out there that speak Spanish, it's spelled Laputa. And so for half the time we were watching, we were making the joke that they were looking for Laputa. So that was a fun little extra bit that we added to spice things up. Especially early, because like this movie did this really fantastic thing where like at the beginning of it, I was kind of cracking jokes because it's just so kind of goofy and otherworldly. Mm-hmm. But then somewhere along the way, it just absolutely grabbed me and held my attention the rest of the time. And I stopped making jokes and I was just in awe of like the beauty of this movie.
The soldiers, you look at their helmets and a little bit their uniforms, maybe not the color specifically.
Yeah,
is very German World War One.
I was gonna say, yeah,
which that kind of jives,
or even World War II, really, in a way, especially when you think about like the theme of like this whole weapon thing.
Right, and that kind of is a little bit synergistic with like it feels like a thing Toriyama would do, you know, is to pull on.
Yeah, I could see that.
To pull on like Axis powers for his villains. I
almost get like a gorilla feeling from these things a little bit.
Some like a gorilla insect though, you know, because of the
Also, like crossed with a bat because of the whole like wing thing.
They're very otherworldly, and they are like the epitome of what I think of when I think of like a standard issue. Like if you were just a standard issue.
Oh, I would hate to be those guys right now.
Those guys falling. There's a Nick Cage movie from this year, Arcadia, I think it was called.
Okay.
That had like monsters. It's a monster movie with Nick Cage.
Can't go wrong with that.
I'm gonna double check the name of the movie real quick, but the monsters in that. Oh, it was Arcadian.
Okay.
It was from 2024. The monsters in that are like, also, hey, draw me a Miyazaki monster. Like that's what they.
Nice. I like it.
They have like the long spindly arms and the bodies. Like they're a lot like these robots kind of in oh my god, this kid.
How are you still alive, child?
But yeah, they have that feel to them. So and when you read reviews of the movie, they're like Nick Cage battles Miyazaki monsters. Like so it wasn't just me who picked up on that.
Just that line alone, I'm already interested in watching this movie. So
it's okay.
Mission accomplished, I guess.
And then yeah, we're getting now like as Muska is delving further and further into Laputa and everything that it offers, it's unleashing its arsenal.
We're finding out there's a lot more of those robots left than we initially thought.
Yeah.
It looks like the entire underside of the city is just full of them in actuality. Which I think, again, plays really, really nicely with those initial scenes where it seems like very idyllic, very utopia. And then you start to just like with the tree, like we were saying, you start to dig a little deeper into it and you realize, oh, this is just a giant flying fortress. Kind of like what the military has, but just turned to 11, I guess.
And you're getting that harsh lighting again. That like dramatic, scary light again. I like that. Now that you pointed it out.
Yeah, there's moments where they change how they do the lighting, and it absolutely changes the feel of the scene. And then you've got her like. Just everything about this movie is great. Like you can tell all of the thought that went into it because like the fact that this kid's got a grenade launcher and the only reason he has it is because a pirate smuggled it in her pants is amazing. But just that level of like planning ahead where they're like, oh, like we really need to like give this kid something to try and level the playing field with all these adults that he's competing against. And while he's hanging out with pirates, they've got to have illicit weapons. I mean, it's just genius, in my opinion.
I like all that stuff too. Like, just the way he's animated, the way he like wriggles through the cracks has that like claustrophobic feel to it too.
Mm-hmm. And then they do the thing, I call it the Jason thing, where like she's running away and she's frantic, but then every time they cut back to Muska, he's just like calmly walking after her. Well, okay, way to ruin my point, movie. But my point is like those early shots where she's running away, he's just slowly like chasing after her, and it almost gives me like Night of the Living Dead vibes, where like the brother and the sister are in the cemetery in the beginning. He's like, "They're coming for you, Barbara."
Mm-hmm.
But it's like that deliberate, like he's slowly I guess Terminator would be a better way to describe it, where it's that slow pursuit of an enemy that you can't stop.
Mm-hmm.
And it's more about just trying to get away from them than fighting them.
Well, we talked about Streamline earlier, and they did the dub. They dubbed actually 2 more Ghibli movies, My Neighbor Totoro and Kiki's Delivery Service.
Mm-hmm.
So, just some trivia for you there. They didn't only do that one, and I've never heard anything but the Disney dubs for these movies, for any of them, including
that would be the same for me as well,
including Nausicaa. Like I know. There's a lot of people out there who are like, oh, I first saw the Warriors of the Wind. I have, it was a while before I saw Nausicaa.
Yeah.
I only came to this, like, I've only ever seen, like, the Disney dubs of those, of all of these movies. And yeah, the voice casts that Disney went with in general, like, they're just...
They always knock it out of the park.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'll say the weakest one in this movie, unfortunately, in terms of the dub, is James Van Der Beek as Pazu.
I was going to say Anna Paquin, at least for the early part of the movie, especially when it's Sheeta telling Pazu about like her family history and stuff like that, like early on where she talks about where she came from. It came across almost like she was narrating as opposed to like a character telling something about themselves. And she seemed just really kind of like stiff and wooden early in the movie, and then she gets better as it goes along. But again, it's just my opinion.
I think she's in general doing a pretty good performance. I think she's doing like a slight accent too that gives her sort of this like you can't place where she's from exactly, which works really well. It works really, really well with the ultimate backstory of the character as being from Laputa. And so I think I like that. I think James Van Der Beek, here's the issue isn't, it's not like his fault, I won't say, but I think it's generally not a good idea to cast grown men to play young boys.
I'd agree with that. Yeah.
I just think
because he almost goes for like this like adolescent kind of thing, like voice cracking almost in a couple spots, which I can see why you would make that choice, because that is I'm assuming that's the age around what the character's supposed to be. It's just not pleasant to listen to for 2 hours.
Yeah. And by this point, James Van Der Beek is 22 years old, I think, when he's dubbing this movie.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just think grown men can't do the voice for young boys. It's really, really hard.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, I do it when I'm reading manga with my kid, but like...
But you're not doing it for a 2-hour movie that people are going to have to sit and listen to.
I also,
everyone else in the English dub is excellent performance. Even Andy Dick didn't screw it up. So congrats to him for that.
If Disney wants to drive a dump truck full of money to my house, though, I absolutely will voice a young boy.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess we're not as principled as Miyazaki in the end.
No. The voice that Jim Cummings is doing in this is very similar to his voice for Monterey Jack.
Yeah.
Or Pete.
I mean, a lot of his characters are strikingly similar to him just talking. But I mean, his voice is iconic, so I can kind of understand why.
Sure, but his Winnie the Pooh voice is very different.
That's true.
And then I've seen him do things where he talks in the voices of his characters, and because he's done Geppetto, he did the singing voice for.
I think, just real quick, I think it's wild that this was all hand animated. The city falling apart. That is nuts to me.
He's voiced Geppetto. He did the singing voice for Scar in the Lion
And he did an
King.
excellent job.
Tigger, Winnie the Pooh. Yeah. Kaa from the Jungle Book, which he has said, because he's done a thing where like he's had people just be like, name one of my characters and I'll do the voice, and like because he's really good at that, like a Masako Nozawa, where he doesn't have to think about the character, he could just like do the voice. And someone was like,
he's been doing some of them for so long, it wouldn't surprise me.
And someone was like, do Kaa from Jungle Book, and he's like, you don't want to hear that. That's just evil Winnie the Pooh.
I love it. Evil Winnie the Pooh, by the way, is something I need in my life.
He's done Tasmanian Devil.
Yeah.
So yeah, Jim Cummings is, if you didn't know, Jim Cummings is like a very experienced voice actor. So is
iconic. prolific. There's tons of adjectives I could use to describe his work.
Yes. Debbie Derryberry too. I said she's the voice of Jimmy Neutron. She does a whole bunch of other stuff too. Like she was the voice of Wednesday Addams and the '90s Addams Family. She does a bunch of voices in Real Monsters. She's done just like a ton of stuff. Draculara and Monster High. She's done Blaze and the Monster Machines. She's the voice of Diana in the Viz dub of Sailor Moon.
Oh, nice.
I don't know if that means anything to anyone out there. It kind of doesn't for me.
I'm sure there's at least one listener. There's got to be.
I would think. Tress MacNeille, like we mentioned at the outset. Look up Tress MacNeille and you'll be like, oh, she voices everything.
There's like a dozen voice actors that do like most of the cartoons.
Like she did Babs Bunny in the Tiny Toon Adventures. She did Dot Warner from the Animaniacs. Yeah, like I said, she's done a bunch of voices for Futurama. I thought she had done Simpsons, but I'm not seeing it on here.
I'm almost positive she's done Simpsons.
I probably just overlooked it.
Like even just like kids in like Bart and Lisa's like classes.
She voices Agnes Skinner.
Oh, okay,
most notably.
It's mother, it's Aurora Borealis.
And she's also voiced. Hi, I'm Lindsay Nagel, the real estate lady.
Oh, okay.
In Futurama, she's the voice of Mom.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Excellent character.
Also Linda, the news lady who does it with Morbo.
Oh, yeah.
She's Leela's mom. She's Inda from the planet Omicron Persei 8. So yeah, Tress MacNeille has done a ton. And yeah, we're nearing the end of this movie. We're getting to like it's all done, and
we're wrapping things up.
We've got
the fortress has been destroyed, but at least the weapon capability has been removed.
The interpretation I heard of this movie as I was doing a little bit of research and listening to some other podcasts about it and things was that the way the movie ends is a sort of I love Dola's got I love this. They've
Tons
got
of treasure.
It's like a Goonies.
They're pirates. What kind of pirates would they be if they didn't empty their pockets and have tons of jewels in them?
It's like a Goonies kind of moment.
A little bit, yeah. And honestly, it's a good moment.
Yeah. But the interpretation I heard that I really liked was nature reclaims the fortress. Nature destroys that technology, but then nature abandons humanity to live on this earth that has been, like you said, scarred.
Yeah.
It is not, in terms of the environmentalist message, it's like saying that humanity doesn't deserve to live at peace and at one with nature because they can't, because they don't know how.
All right, yeah, I'll buy that. I can see that.
And that also because of that, they lose their utopian society as well.
Okay. No, yeah, I believe that because like without the Laputian technology, they're missing out on all the ways that they could have actually improved life on the planet.
Yeah, it's that more subtle messaging, right? It's not necessarily like a good bad type of thing, especially the technology in this movie. Like the technology is what would have allowed them to live this like more utopian lifestyle, but
yeah,
humanity couldn't handle it. So it's not technology itself isn't, and this is this is a kind of a good message actually. Technology itself isn't the thing that's good or evil. It's the way
how we utilize
that
it.
you use it. Yeah. That's sort of the message of this movie. And then where our credits are rolling as the castle floats still in the sky and the song is playing. There's this song playing and it's not subtitled, unfortunately. I would have liked for it to be subtitled so that I could get a feel for it.
I'm sure you could probably find, like, if you were so inclined, you could probably find the lyrics translated online somewhere.
I was just curious if they would have any specific.
It does seem like a bit of an oversight, honestly.
Yeah. So, what would you give Castle in the Sky out of our 7 Dragon Balls?
Oh, out of 7 Dragon Balls, I give it at least a 6. Maybe a 6.5, depending on the day.
You can't cut a Dragon Ball in half.
I could do whatever I want. This is all make-believe anyway.
I would give it a very, very solid 6. Yeah,
it could even creep up there to 7. Like I said, depending on the day.
I think the problem with potentially creeping it up to 7 is more. I know how good a Miyazaki movie can be.
Yeah, that's true.
Not to take away from this movie at all, because I think it's great. I think this is a great movie. It's just not up to that level of like Spirited Away or Mononoke.
It's like finding like a precious gemstone, but before it's been like had the facets cut into it.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a lot of, and you can see like the raw potential and talent that Miyazaki has, but he hasn't perfected his way of doing things yet, or he hasn't really like, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like he's like another couple movies away from like really hitting his stride,
from really honing in on that. Yeah.
Yes.
And so if you haven't seen any other Miyazaki movies, absolutely go and watch his other movies. Also, make sure you go and watch Isao Takahata's movies. For other Ghibli movies, I would honestly just say, just don't worry about the Goro Miyazaki ones, but all the rest are actually pretty good. Even there's like I said, I mentioned I don't really like Only Ocean Waves, and I'm not super huge on Whisper of the Heart either. I still think I would absolutely recommend go check those out, because maybe you'll click on them a little more than I did. And also, Whisper of the Heart is the one that was directed by, I forget, Yoshifumi Kondo. He was intended to be like the person who would kind of take over Ghibli after Miyazaki and Takahata sort of stepped away, and then he unfortunately passed away.
Sorry to hear that.
But then the movie The Cat Returns is actually like a spin-off of Whisper of the Heart, and I really like The Cat Returns. So, and I also really like Arrietty.
Oh, that's a good one that most people don't talk about.
Yeah. So yeah, just don't watch the ones directed by Goro Miyazaki, because at best they are meh.
That's pretty good advice. And on top of that, like I feel like the better ones most people have at least heard of if they haven't seen them.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, you folks know where you're going to go to watch your next one. But we heartily recommend you go and watch more of these, because they are all pretty good.
Yes. If you're looking for one to watch during spooky season, I
mean, Spirited Away seems like
I think
the obvious choice.
That's probably the one that I would go to. If you're looking for a Ghibli movie to watch during this time of the year, that's the one I would head to.
And if you want something that's maybe a little bit more fairy tale as opposed to scary story, My Neighbor Totoro would probably be a good substitution for that.
Yeah. And then if you want to watch an awesome one about scrotal sacks fighting against the man, watch Pompoko. And you know what? Pompoko actually could be a little bit of a spooky season one, because they have that March of the Yokai.
Oh yeah, that's a good
part
point
in it. So yeah,
you got options, folks. Go do it. Go do it now.
That's That's everything I think I could possibly come to think of about Castle in the Sky, and a lot of things that I couldn't think of for Castle in the Sky.
I was honestly worried whether we'd have enough material to cover the full runtime of this. I think we did okay.
Now that we have wrapped up our October season, and we have wrapped up talking about the original Dragon Ball, what awaits us in the future of Final Forum? You already heard that we're going to do Masako Nozawa, but stay tuned for the rest. Find out next time and help us achieve our Final Forum.
Final Form is written and produced by Tom Gwelly. It is performed by Dan Kinney and Tom Gwelly. Our webmaster is Dan Kinney. Our theme music is provided by YouTube content creator GVG Kid. Want to learn more about the Dragon Ball universe, including concept art, behind-the-scenes interviews, and recommendations from Jelli and Bekinney? Connect with us on social media. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at Final Forum Pod. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you receive your podcasts. And of course, make sure to share it with your friends and family and help us spread the word of the glory of Lord Frieza. The Frieza Force thanks you for your listenership.